The haunted cabin in the woods. The forest wouldn't let them leave. The road narrowed with every mile until it was little more than a weathered ribbon of cracked gravel winding through the endless forest. Thick pine trees crowded in on either side, their towering trunks rising like silent sentinels that had stood watch for centuries. Their branches intertwined high above, forming a dense canopy that swallowed the afternoon light and transformed the road into a dim green tunnel. The deeper they drove, the quieter the world became. Birds no longer sang. Even the wind seemed reluctant to disturb the ancient woods. The 5 friends, Sarah, Daniel, Marcus, Claire, and Jonah, had spent months planning the trip. After exhausting weeks of work, deadlines, and city noise, they had longed for somewhere untouched by civilization. No phone reception, no traffic, no responsibilities. Just a weekend of hiking, campfires, and the comforting silence of nature. The isolation had seemed like the perfect escape. By the time the cabin finally appeared, dusk had begun to settle over the forest. It emerged so suddenly from the trees that Daniel instinctively hit the brakes.
There it is.
The cabin crouched alone in a small clearing, looking less like a holiday retreat and more like something abandoned to time. Its weather-beaten walls were stained almost black with age, while the porch sagged under its own weight as though one strong gust might collapse it entirely. Moss crept over the stone chimney, and crooked shutters hung loosely from rusted hinges. The windows reflected nothing. They were dark, empty hollows that seemed to watch the newcomers in complete silence. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Jonah laughed.
Well, this definitely wasn't in the photos.
The tension broke instantly. Claire rolled her eyes. Marcus grabbed the bags from the trunk, and within minutes they were joking about horror movies and placing imaginary bets on who would die first. Sarah smiled along with the others, though she couldn't shake the strange feeling that someone was watching them from somewhere beyond the tree line. The cabin's front door groaned loudly as Daniel pushed it open. A wave of stale, icy air drifted out to meet them. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp timber, old dust, and something far older, an earthy, decaying scent that reminded Sarah of freshly turned soil after rain. It lingered beneath everything else, subtle yet unmistakable, as though the building had absorbed generations of secrets into its wooden walls. The interior was surprisingly spacious, despite its neglected appearance. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, surrounded by faded furniture draped in sheets of dust. Cobwebs stretched lazily between exposed ceiling beams, and every floorboard creaked beneath their footsteps. The silence inside felt unnaturally heavy, broken only by the occasional groan of aging timber settling against itself. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, the friends quickly set about making the place their own. Windows were open to let in fresh air. Sleeping bags were unrolled in the upstairs bedrooms. Marcus gathered firewood while Daniel coaxed reluctant flames to life in the fireplace. Soon the crackling fire chased away the evening chill, bathing the room in warm orange light. As darkness consumed the forest outside, the cabin slowly transformed. Music played softly from a portable speaker until its battery finally died. They cooked dinner over the fire, passed bottles between them, shared old stories, and laughed until tears rolled down Claire's cheeks. Shadows danced harmlessly across the walls, and for a while, the strange unease each of them had quietly felt seemed almost ridiculous. Outside, however, the forest remained perfectly still. No owls called, no insects chirped, no branches swayed against the wind. It was as though the woods themselves were listening. One by one, exhaustion claimed them. The fire burned low, conversations faded into sleepy murmurs, and eventually every room fell silent. Midnight arrived unnoticed. Sarah wasn't sure what woke her. At first she thought it was part of a dream, a faint vibration somewhere beyond consciousness. Then she heard it again. A voice, low, steady, chanting. She held her breath. Another voice joined it, then another. Soon dozens of voices moved together in a slow, rhythmic cadence, speaking words she couldn't understand. The language sounded impossibly old, each syllable drawn out with deliberate precision, echoing through the darkness like the remnants of an ancient ritual. Sarah sat upright in bed, her pulse quickening. The chanting wasn't outside. It wasn't coming from another room. It was beneath her. Carefully, trying not to wake the others, she slipped from the bed and knelt on the cold wooden floor. The cabin was deathly silent except for those impossible voices, rising and falling in perfect harmony. Her heart pounded as she lowered herself until one ear rested against the floorboards. The wood felt strangely cold. The chanting became unmistakably clear. There were people beneath the cabin, many of them, and they were getting louder. Morning arrived without comfort. A dull gray light seeped through the cabin's grimy windows, but did little to chase away the unease that had settled over the 5 friends. No one had slept well. Sarah said nothing about the chanting she had heard beneath the floorboards, convincing herself it had been some strange combination of exhaustion and imagination. Yet as she descended the stairs, she found the others already awake, their faces drawn with the same quiet exhaustion that she felt. Claire was standing beside the front door, staring silently at one of the support beams.
What is that?
The others gathered around. Fresh carvings covered the weathered wood. They hadn't been there the night before. Thin grooves had been cut deep into the timber, as though scored by an impossibly sharp blade. Spirals twisted inward upon themselves, intersected by jagged lines and strange geometric shapes that seemed to shift the longer anyone looked at them. Some resembled eyes. Others looked almost like branches or roots spreading through the grain of the wood. Jonah ran his fingers over one of the symbols.
These cuts are fresh.
Marcus forced out a laugh that sounded hollow even to himself.
Someone's messing with us. Probably local kids trying to scare tourists.
Claire slowly shook her head.
No. I cleaned this doorway yesterday. I would have noticed.
Silence settled over them. Marcus smiled again, but it was an effort. The humor never reached his eyes. Behind the grin, fear had already begun to take root. They spent the morning searching the property. No footprints surrounded the cabin. No vehicle tracks marked the road. The damp earth remained untouched except for their own disturbances. Beyond the clearing, the forest seemed different somehow. The trees stood impossibly still. The usual chorus of birds had vanished. There was no rustle of squirrels in the branches, no insects humming through the undergrowth, not even the whisper of wind moving through the pine needles overhead. The silence felt unnatural, dense enough to press against their ears. Further into the woods, Daniel and Marcus found an old fire pit. It should have been nothing more than a dark circular patch of ground, packed hard with cracks in it. Instead, they discovered that there was fresh embers, and the surface around it was still warm, as if a fire had burned there recently. There was even a small waft of smoke rising from the center. When they returned to the cabin, Daniel told the other 3 what they had seen. Sarah caught herself glancing repeatedly into the woods. She couldn't shake the sensation that the forest had crept closer during the night. The wall of trees now seemed to lean toward the cabin, their dark trunks packed tightly together like silent spectators watching from the edge of the clearing. Every time she looked away, she had the unsettling impression that they had moved another step nearer. No one suggested going hiking anymore. Instead, they stayed close to the cabin, speaking in quieter voices than before, as though afraid of disturbing something sleeping beneath the earth. That evening, heavy clouds swallowed the sunset before darkness settled over the forest. The fire burned brightly in the stone fireplace, but its warmth no longer reached the corners of the room. Shadows gathered there, impossibly deep, stretching across walls where no flame should have cast them. Marcus noticed it first. He glanced toward the hallway. For just a moment, a tall silhouette crossed the doorway. He spun around. Nothing, only darkness.
You guys see that?
Nobody answered. Then Jonah froze. Across the room, another shadow slid silently along the wall. It moved against the direction of the firelight. Claire clutched Sarah's arm. The cabin fell deathly still. Then it began again, A low chant rose from somewhere beneath the floor. One voice, then several, then what sounded like dozens. The same ancient rhythm Sarah had heard the previous night echoed through the timbers, louder now, each word vibrating through the cabin like a heartbeat. A deep drum answered from below. Boom, boom, boom. Night descended like a funeral shroud. The last embers of twilight disappeared behind a blanket of black clouds, leaving the forest drowned in absolute darkness. Even the moon seemed unwilling to shine upon the clearing. The fire in the stone hearth crackled weakly, its light struggling against the oppressive gloom that gathered in every corner of the cabin. No one spoke. The events of the day had stripped away every attempt at humor. Marcus and Daniel's discovery of the fire pit lingered in each of their minds like a curse. The carved symbols seemed darker now, etched into every doorway and support beam. They almost appeared to pulse whenever the firelight flickered across them. Then, without warning, the front door slammed shut. The sound exploded through the cabin like a gunshot. Claire screamed. A second door slammed, then another. Bang, bang, bang. Every door in the cabin began opening and closing violently, as though unseen hands were racing from room to room. Hinges shrieked. The walls trembled. Windows rattled in their frames. Jonah lunged for the front door. It refused to budge.
Damn it, it's stuck.
Sarah responded, her voice trembling.
No, it's locked.
Before anyone could answer, every window shattered at once. Glass erupted inward in a storm of glittering shards, scattering across the wooden floor. Yet no wind entered through the broken frames. Outside remained perfectly still, the forest standing motionless beyond the jagged openings. The silence lasted only a heartbeat. Dark stains began spreading across the walls. At first they resembled water, seeping through old timber. Then they deepened into thick streams the color of dried blood, creeping downward in twisting veins. The stains flowed against gravity, branching across the ceiling before dripping onto the floor, in slow, heavy drops that vanished the instant they landed. Marcus backed away.
This isn't real.
His words dissolved as the cabin disappeared around him. The floor beneath his feet melted into damp earth. He stood alone in an endless forest. Towering pines surrounded him in every direction, their trunks stretching impossibly high into darkness. No matter which way he ran, the trees shifted, paths twisted, branches reached across his escape. The forest folded in on itself like a living maze, herding him deeper into its heart. Behind him came the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them, not running, walking, patiently, as hunters who already knew their prey had nowhere left to flee. Marcus screamed, but the forest swallowed the sound whole. Elsewhere, Claire found herself standing beneath a crimson sky. The clearing had become a nightmare of smoke and fire. Ancient wooden dwellings burned fiercely, collapsing into showers of sparks. Men, women, and children fled through the flames while dark figures moved among them, their cries echoing with unbearable grief. The air reeked of ash, scorched earth, and death. Claire reached toward a crying child. Her hand passed straight through. The child turned. Its face was nothing but darkness. A drumbeat thundered through the vision. Boom, boom, boom. The sound grew louder until it drowned out every scream. Claire opened her mouth to call for help. No voice emerged. The shadows at her feet stretched upward, wrapping around her ankles before climbing slowly over her body. Cold engulfed her as darkness swallowed her whole. Jonah stumbled backward into the living room. The front door burst open by itself. Beyond it lay no porch, no clearing, only endless blackness. Something moved within it. A shape, far taller than any human, stepped slowly toward the doorway, though no features could be distinguished beyond its towering silhouette. Jonah threw his shoulder against the door. With every ounce of strength he possessed, he forced it shut. The invisible thing struck the opposite side. The impact nearly tore the door from its hinges. Again, the entire frame splintered. Cracks raced through the ancient wood. Jonah screamed with effort, his muscles shaking as another tremendous blow landed from outside, or perhaps from somewhere far worse. Meanwhile, Sarah collapsed to her knees. The floor beneath her rippled like water. The old floorboards split apart. Long, skeletal fingers emerged from the darkness below. One hand, then another, then dozens. Yellowed bones clawed desperately through the widening gaps, scraping against the timber with a sound like knives across stone. Their empty fingers reached upward, grasping at her feet, her clothing, her hands. She scrambled backward, sobbing. The skeletal hands kept coming. Their silent desperation was somehow more terrifying than rage. It was as though countless souls had been trapped beneath the cabin for generations, forever reaching toward a world they could never again touch. Daniel stood frozen in the center of the room. His friends were disappearing before his eyes. The cabin itself seemed to writhe around him. The walls breathed. The ceiling bowed downward. The chanting had become deafening, joined now by a chorus of deep ceremonial drums that shook the very foundation of the earth. Thinking only of stopping whatever nightmare had awakened, Daniel seized a burning log from the fireplace. The flames licked wildly around the end of the timber. With a desperate cry, he hurled it into the center of the room. Fire exploded across the floor. The blaze rose impossibly high, then stopped. It did not consume the cabin, illuminated it. The fire burned with an unnatural blue-white glow, washing away every shadow. What it revealed stole the breath from everyone still able to see. Figures slowly rose through the floorboards as though the wood no longer existed. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Translucent forms clothed in garments from another age emerged silently from beneath the cabin. Some carried spears, others held bows or ceremonial staffs. Many bore wounds that never healed, ashes upon their skin, broken bones, and faces marked by unimaginable suffering. Their eyes burned with an unearthly light, not with hatred alone, but with profound sorrow, a grief so ancient and overwhelming that it seemed to fill the entire cabin. They surrounded the 5 friends without speaking. Every drumbeat ceased, every whisper faded, the silence became unbearable. Then the tallest of the spectral figures stepped forward. Its gaze settled upon Sarah. When it finally spoke, its voice sounded like wind moving through 1,000 dead trees.
You have awakened what should have remained forgotten.
The flames dimmed, and every spirit in the cabin took one slow step closer. When dawn finally broke, pale sunlight filtered through the pines and settled over the lonely clearing. The cabin stood exactly where it always had, silent, still, empty. The front door hung slightly ajar, gently creaking in the morning breeze. Every shattered window was whole again, their glass reflecting only the forest beyond. The walls bore no trace of the black stains that had bled across them during the night. Inside, the fireplace was cold. The logs that had burned so fiercely were untouched, as though no fire had ever been lit. There were no footprints in the damp earth, no discarded packs, no broken furniture, no sign that 5 friends had ever arrived seeking a peaceful weekend away from the world. Even the shallow pit Daniel had dug beside the old fire ring had vanished. The earth lay smooth and undisturbed, covered with a thin blanket of pine needles, hiding whatever secrets rested beneath. Only the forest remained, watching, listening, waiting. Days later, search teams followed the narrow road into the mountains after the friends were reported missing. They found the cabin exactly as described, abandoned and weathered by time. Every room was empty. No blood, no clothing, no phones, no vehicle. It was as if Sarah, Daniel, Marcus, Claire, and Jonah had simply ceased to exist. Despite weeks of searching, no trace of them was ever found. The case was eventually closed. The forest kept its silence. Years passed, and the story slowly became another local legend whispered around campfires and told to curious hikers who wandered too far from the marked trails. The older residents avoid the clearing altogether. They say the cabin doesn't always appear. Sometimes the road simply ends in untouched forest. Other times, usually when the mist is thick or the sun is sinking below the trees, the old cabin is waiting exactly where it has always been, its windows dark, its porch sagging beneath the weight of countless seasons. Those who claim to have seen it all tell the same story. As you draw near, the forest falls unnaturally quiet. No birds sing. No wind stirs the branches. Then, from somewhere deep beneath the earth, comes the slow, steady beat of a drum. Boom. 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 The sound is faint at first, almost easy to dismiss, until another drum joins it, then another. Soon the rhythm surrounds you, echoing through the trees like the heartbeat of something ancient awakening beneath the ground. If you dare to look toward the cabin's windows, you may notice movement behind glass. Figures, perfectly still, watching, waiting for someone to open the door. The wisest travelers turn back the moment they hear the first drumbeat. Others convince themselves it's only the wind. They walk a little closer. They climb the porch. They reach for the handle. The door always opens. No one knows what waits beyond it, but those who enter are never seen again. And on quiet nights, when the forest holds its breath, the drums continue their endless rhythm beneath the trees, patiently calling for the next visitor, certain that, sooner or later, someone will answer. If you enjoyed this tale, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. It would mean the world to us.